It seems like a cheat code. I'm curious about like the mindset that you had and how much you attribute that and the discipline to your success in the business world.
Like the best loan product that you can get into real estate with, it being zero down. You can negotiate in the seller paid closing costs for your first one. You don't have the VA funding fee. So we literally bought our first house for like $2,500.
So can you talk to the team members you need to put in and then kind of what their roles are? And then what apps or programs are you using behind the scenes? I think not a lot of people get into that. And it's just I'm so curious really how people kind of run their ship.
You know, when you're an athlete, especially at the D1 level, there's so much that goes into performing at a high level, and you know that you have to outwork your competition to win the game. So I think that translates so well into the business world.
My parents sold their home like in the last year or so, and the year before they had it listed for like $725, and this past year, 9 months later, they sold it for $815. And it's just like, so then that affects the neighbors.
Like if you buy a house and double the income of it, it doesn't change the value because you're stuck with the comps. Whereas if you double the NOI in a hotel, you're doubling the value of the property.
The buying, renovating, operating them, like what your experience was like and how that kind of shaped you, because it sounds like from there, you took the short-term rental route and went and shifted into boutique hotels.
Welcome back to the Wealth Juice podcast. As always, it's your boys, Ryan and Corey, here with another episode. Today we had an awesome episode. We interviewed Blake Dailey. He is a real estate investor who specializes in boutique hotels. We talked a lot about short-term rentals, hotels, boutique hotels. He's got a bunch of projects going on, and he kind of runs the syndication model, but on the boutique hotel side. And we have a couple of people that we run in the same circles with. He's just joined GoBundance, and overall, just an amazing conversation. He is ex-Air Force who just retired and is running this full time now. And lots of things to discuss in the episode. We talk systems, processes, like what to use on the back end, who you need to hire to run an efficient business like this. And then we also talked about the power of your first deal. And you know that's important to Corey and I. We talk about this all the time. Like it's just the power of one. Get that first deal under your belt, and from there, smooth sailing, and you become an investor. You become more confident, and you get into bigger rooms. And so, I guess with that, I should say we still have a few more spots in our coaching program for people this fall. So if you're interested, drop us a DM on Instagram. We teach people how to buy their first or next investment property. Specifically, we hone in on rental properties. A lot of people are doing house hacking, but we have some people within the first few weeks that are under contract. Another guy closed. So a lot of success so far, just getting around like-minded people and attacking the same goal. So if you're interested, we are looking to bring our social community and our podcast community more in-house and start attacking deals together. And there's lots of lead flow in there. So if you're interested, drop us a DM on Instagram. Wanted to give a quick plug there. We're looking to build that and get good people along the journey with us. So without further ado, let's bring in Blake and have a great show. Blake, officially welcome to the Wealth Juice podcast. Corey and I are stoked to have you on the show, man. We were just chatting pre-recording. The vibes are already high. We seem to run in the same circles, and we're just thrilled to have you here. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. We got high vibes, late evening for all of us, but keeping the juice on the weekly juice. So let's get in, man.
Yes, sir. Let's do it. So let's start here. Take us pre-real estate, kind of what you were doing, and then walk us through that light bulb moment when you're like, damn, like I need to get in the real estate game and kind of pursue this thing for, financial independence, generational wealth, all that stuff.
Yeah. So mine started in college. So I, right when I graduated college, I got right in. I commissioned as an Air Force officer. So had the VA loan, which is like a super unfair advantage, in my opinion. It's like the best loan product that you can get into real estate with, it being zero down. You can negotiate in the seller paid closing costs for your first one. You don't have the VA funding fee. So we literally bought our first house for like $2,500 and then furnished it out as a short-term rental because we knew it wasn't going to cover the mortgage and the expenses and everything as a long-term rental. I was like, oh, let's experiment with it out. So that's how we got into the STRs, and that developed into boutique hotels over time. But like when I was in college starting out, I played football at the Air Force Academy. So always like the athlete mentality, grinding, right? Like for 4 years, 7 hours a day in fall and in spring ball was all towards football. And then I finished my senior season. I was like, man, I got to do something with all this extra time. Like I'm too, like my mind's too busy. Like I'm too type A to just take that time and chill and not do something with it. So that's when I got into real estate. Like I'd been listening to Bigger Pockets, read a book here or there. And I was like, I think I could do real estate investing. And my whole goal was like use like real estate investing as a strategy while I was in the Air Force working my W-2 to buy properties over time. And I knew I had a 5-year commitment to the Air Force after I graduated. And my whole goal was to buy enough rental properties, and didn't even know about STRs at the time, but like buy enough rental properties to be able to have the option to, walk away from the Air Force if I wanted to, or to stay in and just, keep the cash flow going. And we hit that goal in 1 year. And I was like, all right, we got to go bigger. So that's kind of how it started.
Love it, man. I want to talk, before we get into like the portfolio and boutique hotels and STRs and everything, I want to go back to your days as an athlete real quick, because I find this common theme with people who were athletes, who played sports, and this like level of this drive and this competition that is in your head that translates like literally perfectly into the business world. For some better than others, but I have found, I did not play collegiately, but like I coach, and it has made me like so much sharper. And not only that, but just like the whole competition level of life, carrying it over into the business world, I just felt as like, it's like, to me, it seems like a cheat code. I'm curious about like the mindset that you had, and how much you attribute that and the discipline to your success in the business world.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I don't have any other experience other than being an athlete, right? Like I grew up playing sports, playing like I was a football and track athlete in high school, and being a taller, bigger built guy, like track wasn't going to be my ticket out of the small town. So put on the extra 5 or 10 pounds, and it's a football scholarship. So, and funny enough, I started out as a running back, and then I found out I was too slow to play running back in D1. So converted over to the defensive side of the ball, where you just got to be mean and, work hard, stay low and square. But that was my whole experience, right? Like I always achieved my goals that I had in life through hard work in sports, right? That was that got me to All-State in high school. That got me recruited into college. And then that same work ethic got me through the military training and helping my military career. So that grind and that grit to, all the things that go into it, the weight room, the film study, the preparation, the nutrition, the training. Like I think, when you're an athlete, especially at the D1 level, there's so much that goes into performing at a high level, and that you have to outwork your competition to win the game. So I think that translates so well into the business world, because you don't have that same direct level competition. And one of the coolest things is you don't have an expiration, right? You don't have a certain amount of games or an ending to your season. Like if you keep busting your ass, you can, lose and get beat up and not be good enough, but be building your skill set, and be building your competence, be building your business and all the things that you need to like finally get the win. And it's a very long game, but all the things that go into being an athlete and finding success through the hard work and the preparation, like that is business. It's just, I do the same things now without taking the collisions, which is helpful.
Exactly. Right. And avoiding the CTE in the business world, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the boutique hotels, because I know that's what you're into now. But before, it sounds like you started out in short-term rentals. So let's just discuss like your entryway into short-term rentals, the buying, renovating, operating them, like what your experience was like and how that kind of shaped you. Because it sounds like from there, you took the short-term rental route and went and shifted into boutique hotels.
Yeah. So like starting out with short-term rentals and doing Airbnbs, I was doing the whole Airbnb strategy, or Airbnb, whatever you want to call it, but buying beat up houses, fixing them up, making them really nice, designing them, and then renting them as an Airbnb rental, and doing all the operations myself, or with me and my wife. So that was a way, because of where we were stationed first, my first assignment, where we bought our first house, we're in Panama City in Florida. So a really great STR market, especially back when we started in 2019, we'd still get houses, at pretty affordable prices, especially on the back end of a hurricane. And there was plenty to buy and renovate and fix up that were in these good areas that we could get good deals on. So it was really like learning the fundamentals of real estate, doing, all of the acquisitions and the renovations myself to dial in the fundamentals and all the things that would go forward towards the bigger deals. And I didn't quite know that would be the strategy yet, but as the portfolio built up and we went with the STRs, because we were getting 2 to 3x of as an Airbnb of what we would as a long-term rental. So it's like, why would we do anything but that? Like, we just got to get really good at managing and, try to build some systems and figure out how to not work our days away. And as that portfolio built, I mentioned earlier, we had replaced or like exceeded with our cash flow what I was making from the Air Force in that first year. So then it was like a reset of the goals and the priorities. Like it really made it more, I think, attainable in my mind to do something bigger, because I was just head down grinding, right? Just straight up linebackering my real estate, right? Just head down grinding. And like, as soon as I popped up a little bit, I was like, oh man, we did something pretty cool. So that was a transition into the commercial side of real estate, bigger deals, bigger chunks of capital. So then you got to learn how to raise money, learn how to underwrite the deals, learn how to structure a commercial deal, learn like the SEC side, and putting that all together syndicated my first apartment complex. But that was a 10-month process. Like, it did not happen fast. There was a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of long nights, a lot of the unglorious work, right? Like the spring ball in the 2 days in August, like leading up to getting that first deal. And we finally got it. But on the back end of that was, toward, into COVID a little bit. So all this big money was coming from private equity and hedge funds and the Blackstones of the world into commercial multifamily. It was like, how am I, a guy in my early 20s at the time, going to compete with those level of investors? So I needed to find a pivot point. And for me, it was like, all right, I know commercial real estate, or at least I'm competent in it and comfortable enough to, pursue that. And I know the Airbnbs, we've got a portfolio of 8 or 10 of them at the time, and a couple long-term rentals. So like, we knew the Airbnb and the operation, the design and furnishing and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, where can we put those two together? And I thought that it was going to be buying hotels and converting them into multifamily, like small efficiency units or studios that you could rent on long-term leases. And then through that process, we found the first smaller hotel that was 8 units. So a great entry-level deal. It was $357,000. So it was like the price I was buying houses for. And I got seller financing on it. So I was like, I went from 8 STRs to 8 in one purchase. And I was like, that is an easier transition point for me to make in my own head of like, okay, I can do this. Like, I'm not crazy for taking on this bigger deal. At the time, like, boutique hotels wasn't even talked about. Like, that was, something, the Marriott Tribute portfolio and like hoteliers, in New York and LA did. So it was kind of just figuring out as we went and taking the experience that we had at that point into this new area of like, we'll figure it out. We're getting a good enough deal, and the rest will buff out.
So I'm curious about when you started out doing the STRs and you mentioned you were doing everything yourself. Now, was that the construction, whatever rehab was needed, whatever furnishing was needed? Did you do the cleaning and the management of the like the actual guests and everything? Like, did you do all of that? Because that is, on 8 units, that's a full-time job for multiple people, right? Like,
while my wife was getting her doctorate and I was working full-time in the Air Force. So our very first one, we did the cleaning ourselves. And then the next ones that we bought were all in the same town in Panama City. That one of them was like 6 blocks away. And that's when we had to start to find cleaners, because we'd have whatever it was at the time, 3 or 4 that we'd have to turn, and Sundays is your big turn time, so we had to figure out like, hey, how do I find cleaners? Like, it was just going to Facebook Marketplace, and I remember like sitting in our living room one day and had like 3 cleaners come by and interviewed all of them. I was like, we'll give them a try. Like, I don't know anything about hiring. They say they can clean. I'll have them show up and figure it out. So then when you hire bad cleaners, you've got to, you might as well go do the cleaning yourself, because all the text messages back and forth, the checking their work, they ask you questions, they suck your time. So we did all of that, kind of started off the first one cleaning ourselves, and then started to bring in cleaners, but we did the management ourselves. I did the construction management. There was some things that me and Nicole would do ourselves. Like, we would, paint rooms or do some flooring or, trim and paint, change out some fixtures, things like that. But a lot of these homes were bigger hurricane damage renovations. So there's a lot of mold remediation, new framing, new roofs, new electrical and plumbing in a lot of them. So we weren't doing that stuff, but I was a construction manager pretty much, or project manager in the Air Force. So that was pretty applicable to what I did on the day-to-day. or at least I thought like it was a different scope,
Yeah.
but I was the confidence of doing a $4 million Air Force contract gave me the confidence to manage those contractors. So we did as much as we could and kind of tapped it out on the residential portfolio, which was the push to go into commercial so we could build the team and get more efficient.
Makes sense. Before we get into the commercial side, I'm just curious, like you had properties that were hurricane damaged. Was your strategy, because I own property in Tampa and every year I would get worried, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, oh God, what's gonna happen? I mean, I pay an ungodly amount in insurance. So it's
man,
like
Florida insurance is nuts.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, did you just say, hey, I'm gonna insurance up, like just get the flood, get all the insurance? And because if that happened to a property before you bought it, I mean, I guess the chances it could happen again is, not high, but it's there.
Yeah.
So like
the way I always looked at it was like I looked at like the category 5 impacts in the panhandle and averages them averaging every like 15 to 19 years. And I was like, so I got at least, I'll hold these properties for a little while.
20 years.
And, I was always had the wind coverage and, full coverage with insurance and everything like that. But at the time, 2019, 2020, 2021, insurance rates weren't that crazy. It was like, into 2021 and 22 and 23 that they really started going up. Carriers started getting on the market because, while we stayed in Florida or while we lived in Florida, we left in 2022. Think like one or two other hurricanes hitting the Gulf. Like one hit, Fort Myers and one went up through,
Ian, I think
like,
Hurricane Ian, I remember that.
So it's just like it got crazier and I just didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So I was like, oh, it's fine. Sure, we're in the path of storms, but once every 20 years or so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the price you pay for living in paradise, right? I mean, like I love Florida. Every time I go down there, I'm like, why do I live in the cold in the winter? It's brutal. Yeah, but I mean, it's
I'm still trying to talk my wife into to moving back for the same thing, man. I think I spent 3 years in Florida and turned into a Florida man. Board shorts and flip flops feel way too natural now.
Dude, I'm with you, and I'm like a Philadelphia guy, so I'm even further away than you are, like naturally from it. But every time I'm going down in a couple of weeks, and even in September, I don't care. I just
that's like the best time of year. September, early October, all the tourists are gone. It's still warm. The water's like 75 degrees. Perfect time.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the boutique hotels specifically. Like, that purchase price is insane. I can't believe you got a property for $375,000 that had 8 units or 8, I guess it would be rooms, right? So I'm very curious about the structuring of these deals and like how they work. I have been looking at more boutique hotels just in terms of like staying in places because it seems like a cool, unique experience. I'm wondering like, how did the deal structure work on a, you can talk about your first, or you can talk about, I know you have 85 units now, or maybe more since this email I got. Just talk to me about like the structure of putting these deals together.
Yeah, it really depends. I like to look at it as like the equity spread that you have in the deal really dictates how you can structure it with investors because these are bigger purchase prices, which means bigger down payment. So if you don't have that money yourself, you're going to need to raise it from investors. And this first hotel that was 8 units, 357,000, 10% down, seller finance, but the rehab was going to be pretty large. I mean, we're doing a full gut rehab, new roof, electrical, doors, windows, like everything, adding kitchenettes to all the rooms as well. So I think it was planned out to be like a $500K rehab. I think it ended up being like a $750K rehab because like COVID delays, bad contractors, lessons learned, as will happen when you jump from residential to commercial. So make sure you buy a good deal. But went through, all of that. And I knew I was going to have the equity spread, or at least from the beginning, that I'd be able to get the value up and refinance this thing and get the money back. So I'd been doing private money for other deals for my small residentials and like my Airbnbs. I was, raising 10% for the down payment, doing hard money, raising the private capital for the renovations and refinancing everybody out. So my plan was to do the same thing with this one, and that's what we did. So it was a bigger deal. So I think I brought in five past investors that had like promissory notes on the property. They were getting their interest rate, and when we finished the renovation and refinanced it, they got paid back with interest, and everybody was happy after a little stressful period. I was like, I don't know if I can finish this renovation and get them all paid back, but we got there. And as we went from there, the bigger deals, they started to get to be over $1 million, over $2 million. The most recent one was $7 million. So as those are going to require even more capital. So, and we also closed like 3 together in a package. So we closed 2 in Panama City and 1 in Tahoe together as a package and raised the money for those 3 deals. And it was actually from a small group of investors. So it wasn't a syndication. We just structured as a partnership. So we've done it that way as well. And on this most recent one, it's 130 units in the Smokies here in Tennessee. And that was a syndication. So it really just depends on your deal, on your availability of capital. Like if I had 1 or 2 people that had the $4 million I needed for this deal, I would have just done it as a partnership, right? Just brought them in, but needed a bigger chunk, more people. So I had to structure it differently.
I love it, man. Thank you. So, couple questions for you. I want to get into deal analysis because I think like just from the outside perspective, when you hear boutique hotel, like I'm not even sure how you would go about analyzing that. So can you talk about how you'd vet out a good deal and kind of like uncomplex it for us?
Yeah, that's a good question because I see a lot of people try to like adapt like a multifamily analysis tool for boutique hotels, but you guys could probably imagine the problems of trying to take like monthly rents that are consistent monthly rents all seasons of the year to a boutique hotel. It's going to have fluctuating high season, low season. You're going to have different rates throughout the year, different occupancies. So you really are dealing with a different product and a different expense layout as well. So I think when you're looking at a boutique hotel, like the important things are to look at your expense ratio. And for ours, we typically are like in a low 60s, 60 to 64 or so % expense ratio because we have the added labor and all that. So you want to make sure you have enough margin in that deal. And then when you're like pulling your comps, if you have a hotel and you're trying to just use AirDNA data, like if you're coming out of the short-term rental space and that's what you're used to, you're probably not going to pull the best data as what a hotel in that same area would operate as, right? So I like to think of it as like this art and the science of analyzing a deal. And AirDNA is great for the subjective side or that art piece of it, right? Because you can filter the listings in an area by the revenue, and then you can see the size, the bedroom count, the amenities, the quality, and the design, and kind of, cross out the best ones in the market because they're just unique stays or, premium standalone houses that are just smaller. And then you'll have the ones that aren't so good. So then you get a layer of the ones that match more closely to what your product is going to be. And then there's the whole hotel data side, which I get mine from str.com. So it's Smith Travel Report, which is owned by CoStar. And that's all the hotel aggregation, performance metrics in any given area. You can search by, your comp set of properties, the city, the zip code. So then it's taking that like very quantitative data and matching it with or quantitative and matching it with the qualitative of like the AirDNA and STR side and kind of combining those two to see what yours is going to operate most closely to. Because if you're going to have a mix of studios and 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, your 1 and 2 bedrooms might perform more closely to like the AirDNA style. Whereas your studios, single kings, double queens, like straight up hotel units are going to perform much closer to that data. And it's just a matter of going through and figuring out your operating expenses of how many people do you need to run that deal, right? Because now you have a lot of check-ins, you have housekeepers, you have maintenance, and making sure you get your expenses dialed in, because that's another area I see people make a lot of mistakes is going way too light on the expenses and having like a 45% expense ratio. I'm like, dude, you're missing a whole lot. So you might want to reset the expectations. But the cool thing about like the commercial real estate side is, now instead of dealing with comps like you would with houses, like house A is worth as much as house B, that's like a like for like property. On the commercial side, you're valued based on your NOI. So as you buy these older, beat up, smelly, ugly hotels, but they're in good locations and have a really good, potential to be something cool, as you increase that revenue and, manage your expenses and you have your NOI at the end of that, because that's your NOI is your gross income minus your operating expenses, not including the debt service. Once you get that NOI, that's how you're valued. You divide that by the cap rate. So the more income you produce, the more valuable the property is going to be. So that's how I look at it, is like the income, the expenses, the cap rate for that market, and the value that we're going to add through our renovations and operational improvements, and pull the trigger when it looks good.
Yeah, Blake, it's so interesting to me. It's so much less subjective than residential real estate. And as an example, my parents sold their home like in the last year or so, and the year before they had it listed for like 725, and this past year, 9 months later, they sold it for 815. And it's just like, so then that affects the neighbors. Like now the neighbors can get 100K more of, of this purchase price. Whereas in the commercial space, it's, directly correlated to the revenue it brings in, which I think is so interesting, and it's a reference to why commercial is more powerful, right? I mean, if you can bump rents, you're instantly increasing the value of a property. So it's awesome.
And that blocker comes in on the residential side, like say, like your parents' house, for example. Say an STR investor is buying that house because the numbers look great. They've got a good design plan. It's close to whatever the attractions are in that area. They buy it for 725, but then the market stagnates, and it's all the other houses are still selling in the mid sevens, low sevens range, but they double the income of the property beforehand, right? Like if you buy a house and double the income of it, it doesn't change the value because you're stuck with the comps. Whereas if you double the NOI in a hotel, you're doubling the value of the property. Like that's where you get these huge swings of equity that you're creating, and your net worth goes up like crazy.
Yep.
Love it. So next up, I want to talk about the systems that you've built within your business. So can you talk to the team members you need to put in, and then kind of what their roles are, and then what apps or programs are you using behind the scenes? I think not a lot of people get into that, and it's just I'm so curious really how people kind of run their ship.
Yeah. So I can start with the team and the systems, like specifically for how we do it with the boutique hotels. So I like to look at it like two different ways. You have like what I call it, like a minimum viable structure of, you're going to go in a new market and buy a new hotel. And like, I think what your determining factor is the revenue that hotel generates, not a unit count. Cause you could be in a high revenue market, low unit count, and do fine. And so like really in that, like below 500K range of revenue is you're probably going to have either just one manager or like a head housekeeper that kind of fills in for the admin and the guest stuff, or that's you. And then you have your housekeeping team. And I think the cool thing about the hotels, like no matter what, you can outsource the admin from the get-go. So that's like what we call our e-concierge in our business. So they do our guest messaging, which is where a lot of STR investors spend the most amount of their time messaging guests, taking care of them, responding, 10 p.m. at night, they're trying to hang out with their family, got to message a guest. So you can get that off the plate right away. And then if you're stuck at that lower revenue amount, you can maybe get, pay one of your housekeepers a couple dollars per hour more, or, a couple $100 a week or whatever it is, however you structure it, to do some of that on-site stuff and be that little bit of the filter for you, but you still are the one managing that property. Now, if you get above that 500K range, right, this could either be your second hotel that you buy in that market because now you're scaling up, you've learned, and right, what a good deal looks like, or you buy something just bigger from the get-go. Maybe it's 20 units or something like that. Now you can have a full property level staff, have a manager on site, maybe an assistant manager, maybe not, depending on your revenue. But then your housekeeping teams probably have maintenance in-house. You've got probably somebody on the back end, that's helping you with the operations, kind of over the portfolio of what you manage, and that e-concierge team. So it's really like a measure of scale. You can start to put more team and more structure in place. And what those people do is become become filters for you. Now, instead of your guest messaging you, your e-concierge is filtering out the problems and the issues, and anything that gets elevated up is going to that manager and not to you now. So now you're hearing about these the next week on a weekly meeting, seeing how your team dealt with it and giving feedback, and really being a manager and driving the direction of the business and not reactive to all the things going in it. So that's the team structure. And for us, like we've got this 130 unit, we have 16 employees on site, housekeeping, maintenance in-house, venue coordination and sales for our weddings and events, general manager, assistant general manager. And then on the back end, we've got director of operations, revenue manager, guest experience manager, marketing, my executive assistant. Now I've got a brand director as well as we build out more stuff. We did the conference last week, so we've got all these different things going on. So we've got, I think 25 or 26 employees now across the company. So, and how we use the systems and tech to manage that is, I think kind of like the hub of our spoke is Slack, is our team communication tool. So that's where we spend most of our time. We've got our different channels set up for, Tremont Lodge or Seaside Escape. Those are different hotels, or the residential portfolio, the rest of our STRs. So then we're keeping our conversations clear, things in threads, and we're really big on threads. Like if people aren't replying in thread, we put the alarm emoji and delete their message. So they know. And then our PMS is really integral. So we use Cloudbeds on the hotel side and Guesty on the STR side for the smaller hotel, and then the other STRs. And the only reason we use two different PMSs is one, we're big enough and we have enough team members to be able to navigate between them. But also like Cloudbeds is way better for the hotel features and functions and management of a hotel, where Guesty matches the STRs better, and they really don't fit vice versa. And then from there, Price Labs for management. We do Insperity for our payroll. I'm trying to think of the other things that we use. Logistics, LODGISTICS, logistics. We started using them for our maintenance teams and our housekeeping for reporting, for all of our issues that are in rooms that we need to fix up and touch up, deferred maintenance lists, bigger term projects. And we use ClickUp for project management to kind of keep everything clear, have the teams interfacing, have our workflows there. And then Notion kind of acts as our mind map where all of our systems are. That's where all of our admin team and our e-concierge go to reference our documents, our processes, and our systems as they're kind of working through the day-to-day. And that kind of keeps everything consolidated and together and easily navigable, because as we have more robust systems, like the organization and the management of it becomes really important. So that's kind of how we're set up on the back end.
Love it, man. That's great information. I'm curious because Ryan and I have done some syndications as a general partner, and I kind of understand a level of what the return could potentially be for a limited partner on some of these deals. As an example, 6% preferred return, and then maybe 8% recruits year over year on the back end. So you're looking at like a 14% return. So that's just an example of a value-added multifamily. I'm curious, and you don't have to speak to like direct numbers, but if an LP were to invest $100,000 into one of these deals, like what are the returns like on average, if you're able to shed some light on it?
Yeah, I would say what's that line from Wolf of Wall Street? Those are rookie numbers. You got to get those up.
Yeah.
I look at a deal like we're at least gonna double LP money, or we pass on that deal. Oftentimes it's like 2.5 or higher. And this deal that we just did in Tennessee will be a 3X, like the other deal I'm looking at is 3X. And the only reason we have those is because we have big value adds with like the design that we're bringing in, the operations that we're going to be implementing at the property. That are going to increase NOI so much. So I look for somebody, when I say a 3X equity multiple, like somebody's going to put in $100,000 and get $300,000 back over the life of the deal. So that's through cash flow, through appreciation, distributions, everything there. Not counting the tax benefits, because that's the other back end. Like the LPs have amazing tax benefits in hotels. We do cost segregation, right? And we're going to do a multi-year project where we're starting this year, going to finish next year. So we're doing cost segregation 3 years in a row and getting all of these tax benefits to our investors on this deal. But the other metrics that I look for, like a minimum of 10% cash on cash. The one we're working on now will be about 15. So that's just year after year, spitting out 15% cash on cash without the appreciation. And then for an IRR, I think we hit 19 or 20 on this. I think it was 19. I think we went the conservative metric, right? Because we wanted to hit it. But those are like the numbers that I would hit, is like a high teens. Like if it doesn't even hit 16, 15, like I'm probably passing on the deal, because I think there's just too many good deals out there. Like seller financings, pretty readily available, and the NOIs, a lot of these value add hotels are just so low that the spread is there. And I don't think hotels is a game that you want to get into and not have the margin, because it is more work, especially in the beginning. But I do think it's a lot easier on the back end, because you build that team and build those systems like I was talking about. But all those things kind of lead to those return metrics, which I was mentioning.
That's awesome. Those are great returns. I have a couple for you. One point I just want to make is like we're actually GPs on the deal, not the LP side, but you mentioned the tax benefits. Mm-hmm. It's been incredible. We did an extension, as most entrepreneurs do in this game, right? So they're due soon, and we realized we had another K1 come through, and we realized we were going to be able to write another $60,000 off of our income just from being GPs on deal.
You don't have to pay taxes legally, because you're they call them loopholes, but really they're incentives. Like if you're hitting these things, right, you're investing into these properties, providing jobs as a business owner. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the point. Like, especially for the LPs that come in, most of ours are, high income earners, and the tax benefits are, among the most important to them. and we had a lot of IRA investors in ours as well, and they're rolling those tax benefits through to the tax advantaged account. And it's like, yeah, I mean, the LPs are going to do great in these deals.
I think a lot of people need to push this more in the pitch decks. And I say that because a lot of times it's based on, they talk IRR, they talk NOI, they talk just like the return, right? Let's just say the high teens, right? They're for a high income earner, the tax benefits are amazing. And I think Corey and I are just learning this, like the further you get
almost
into the
more
game.
important than like the return itself. Think about
Dude,
a person making $1 million a year. Like they're trying to keep as much of that million as they can, more so than make an extra, 7, 8, 10% on top of it.
It's man,
that's just going to be taxed on another 40%.
Totally.
We learned this like this week, by the way, because we knew all about, like, I can explain the tax benefits, but when we got the K1,
you see it, and you're like, oh shit, I don't have to pay taxes.
Like,
that's pretty cool.
Or you get a return because you already overpaid, and that's the moneymaker. We're like, okay.
Yeah, we did. We overpaid already, and then we're getting like a significant chunk back, and I was like, nice.
I've got this great tax advantage vehicle. If you guys, I'm just kidding.
Okay. No, actually, that's why, I love these conversations, because we just meet people and deals come up. This is what I was going to ask you, and we future investors potentially here, but just because I like your vibe and I think you do a great job. But part B is you're very analytical, and I love this about you. And I just think it's like a lot of guys can talk the talk, but like really getting behind the scenes and getting into the deals, all the systems you guys have in place are incredible. I wanted to kind of dial it back just a little bit, if you could. Actually, before I get there, sorry, I have like 3 questions for you. I'm going to start here. Can you talk about just the strategy here? Are you guys buying and holding these for a long period of time? Is it going to be like a 5 to 7 year plan with kind of like the multifamily, waiting on a refi or a sell? Like, how do you pitch this to investors, and kind of what's your end game?
I like longer term. So we projected a 10-year hold on this one because we needed to put something in there to like calculate the return metrics. But ideally, we can hold on to this, or we get to, like year 6, 7 and can accelerate the IRR by selling for like our year 10 projected purchase price. And I think it's very reasonable with like the direction and the size of this deal. Like there's a lot of buyers and a lot of good private equity buyers for a $1 million plus NOI deal in the 10 million plus purchase price range. So I think that will really benefit us. But I go into a deal looking for a long-term hold with high cash flow where I can refinance in 2, 3, or 4 years and return all the investor capital so that they can go do the next deal with me, right? Like I'm looking for investors for life. I want, the relationship with them. I want them to come see the property, stay at the properties, which you don't have the opportunity to do that in any other asset class. It's like we're buying and building out and renovating this resort. Come see it, come stay at it. Come see it, come see what your money's working in. So then they get bought into the vision through that, get them their money back through that refinance. They invest in the next deal while their money's still working in the previous deal. So you just have this money recycling every 3 years while it's still doubling, every 2 to 3 years in the original asset. So recycling their money in this deal, they're going to be able to have 2 or 3 deals working at the same time with that original pot of money. So that's why I want to hold for the long term, but always keeping in mind that like, investors typically want to see their money coming back to them. Like they want some liquidity, so that refinance is important. So I like to look at things long-term, but how do I get, through the value add phase, stabilize, refinance to get them their money back to invest in the next deal or, whatever they may have lined up for it after that.
Great. For like prospective investors right now that might, they might have some cash on the sidelines, they want to put it to work. How many deals do you typically go through a year? And I'm not hoping for a million, right? I'm just curious on how many you have. And then what's the typical downstroke? Is it 50K, 100K? I know a lot of GPs kind of roll different dice on that.
Yeah. Our typical minimum is 100K for these deals. And I've always just found as a GP too, right, is to have fewer, bigger investors. It's way easier to manage. It's way easier to have those relationships with people. And it's way easier to have, timely and accurate reporting. Because if you have 40, 50 investors in a deal and you're trying to kick out your reports and then, they all want to have a conversation or text about it or phone call, like that's going to take a lot of chunk of your week where you could be managing that deal. So if I can have, 5, 10 people, 15 people, whatever, that really trust me. And I'm like really good with my reporting too and how detailed I get in them so that they see what's going on without the need to, get super involved in the details of it. And a lot of them have come and see the property now. So they're kind of aware of of where it's at. And then, so typically that's why we do the 100K minimum. And then what was the other piece of the question? Oh yeah, about 2 a year. We're looking to get close another one at the end of this year. And the size of the deals that we're looking at are like in the 5 million range, 5 to 10 million on the purchase price, and typically something that we're going to put 3 to 4 million in. So as we look at it, we're going to probably capitalize each one of these deals like with 4 to 5, maybe $6 million. And those also are bigger, longer projects. And as like the team develops out, maybe we'll do 2 a year and up it to 3 or 4. But I'm kind of happy with our acquisition level, because I'd rather have those million plus revenue properties that are more sustainable and more scalable, and less of those that are really, really quality in great locations, than do a bunch of deals just for the sake of doing a deal.
Got it. Cool, man. First of all, this has been awesome. As we wind down the show, I just want to ask you a couple maybe more personal questions. But I'm really impressed with the analytics behind this. And it seems like something that is not only popular, but like it really, really works. Not only for the GPs, but for the LPs. The thing that I want to ask you is that it looks like that you just recently, within the last like 4 or 5 months, left your full-time job. So you've been doing all of this, boutique hotels, short-term rentals, with a full-time job. And I'm curious on like how, sorry, I'm going to re-say that. I didn't realize I had something pop up there. So you've been doing all of this with your full-time job, which is like mind-blowing to me that you've been able to manage that. I know what it's been like for Ryan and I to do this, and I recently just left mine. So what was that transition like, and how did you finally come to the decision to do it at this time?
Just about 5 months ago. It was at the end of March, and we left Utah. We were stationed last in April. So we've been here full time. We moved here to be closer to this deal. I think that was one that was really important to me, with the size of this deal, with with the size of the renovation and the scope of it and all that was going to be going on. I thought it'd be really important. And just from like, I'm always thinking from like the LP perspective, right? Like, what's going to give me the most trust and confidence in an operator? It's like somebody who's willing to go see their property. Like, I know you guys probably know operators that are like, I don't need to go see the property. I can raise the money from a distance, right? They're not even involved in the operations. But I think all my investors know how involved I am with the projects. And that's why I think they work out. Not that we don't have issues, not that we don't have things that go wrong here and there, but we're around to see them. And I'm the last person on earth who let a contractor, get his inch and take his mile. He's going to get his ass whipped back into shape to get back within that inch. And then, yeah, I think so. As we were building this out, I was full time in the Air Force, right? Like in parts of this, I worked for a top secret program. So there's times like I literally had to put my phone in a box and go into a building where you didn't have cell phone internet connection. And thankfully I didn't work in their part-time or full-time, but there's enough of it where it was really, really tough. And I think my solution to that was always to focus on the team and build the systems. And then I don't know how good of a solution this is for everybody else, but I work my ass off. So like it's early mornings, like my deep work time before the sun comes up, before the phone starts buzzing, before emails are coming in, like I'm up working. And then I'm often, at 6 p.m. tonight, I'll probably work till 8 or 9 just to get like caught up on the rest of my stuff. Like I just do the work that needs to get done. And I think as you're building full time, if you want to get to that point, if you want to get to a point of financial freedom, you're going to have to work harder than you want to. You're going to have to push yourself past the point of being comfortable. And that's what makes it more worth it when you get there. And, we've reached financial freedom. We're able to leave our jobs. We're, working on this super fun, awesome, but very tough project, and still busting butt because I enjoyed doing it. I don't know if my wife would say the same all the time. She's like, you're probably working a little bit too much, but it's some things I like. So, find what you're passionate about is my advice for it, and just go at it until you're like comfortable or happy with where it's at, and then start pulling off the gas. And then, think about your portfolio architecture, think about the team that you put in place. And then you can really start to design your design your business around your lifestyle. Like we got to that point in 2022 and 2023, once the first 5 hotels were bought and stabilized, team was in place. Me and Nicole traveled a lot. I didn't work as much. Like we, spent more time on date nights and hanging out on the couch, eating ice cream or whatever, but it's just a different phase of life right now. And I think you go through those, as you get to different levels, you'll go through different phases of that.
100%, dude. Thank you. First of all, I think you're a total badass. Thank you for your service, and just it's unbelievable to see what you've done. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I don't want to gloss over that. Like you're a
Me
beast.
and my Air Force military buddies are always like, all right, appreciate it, guys. Thank you for my service. So there you guys go. Thank you for my service.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we appreciate it, and I don't just say it to say it. Like it's really inspiring and cool, and we appreciate it. Like we wouldn't be here without the guys like you. So when I say parlaying off that, talking about like the way I want to wrap the show up is here a lot of times people get into, we talk about high level deals, we're talking about thousands of units, we're talking about boutique hotels, short-term rentals, all the things, but it all drives back to one road, and that's getting your first deal. And for us, a lot of our audience, we talk to them about the power of one. Just get one and you become an investor, and it changes your whole mindset. You go through the motions. Thinking back
Changes your identity, man. Changes your identity too. It really gets you on a roll.
100%. So can you just talk to the importance of getting your first deal and kind of what it did for you?
Yeah, dude, I think the action behind the desire, the what you want to be and that you're trying to become, right? Like you want to get financially free. You want to leave the job that you don't like. You want to be able to have the cash flow to spend more time with family or do whatever it is, take care, spend more time with your kids. Those are the things you want. I think to get to that point, you have to put in the hard work. You have to do the thing. You have to take the action and make the leap to doing that first deal. And I think even before that, you've got to change your own identity of I am that thing, of I am a real estate investor. Like you have to manufacture this confidence to be able to pick up the phone and call a real estate agent, to be able to go, meet with a seller on a direct to seller lead where like, hey, they might be willing to do seller financing. Like you have to become the investor and manufacture that confidence to be able to go in there, still green behind the ears, be able to talk like you know what you're doing to get in the position to get that deal. So I think the action is always the most important thing. Don't sell yourself short. Like to make this happen, to get your first real estate deal, it doesn't have to be a 130 unit boutique hotel. It doesn't have to be a big apartment complex, because mine wasn't either. Like literally my first deal was VA loan, 0% down, took $2,500 out of pocket. Like it can be that easy. And then even like, as you scale up, my first boutique hotel was 8 units, right? I already had 8. I jumped up to 8 in one purchase, and it was $350,000 with seller financing. So not huge risks, right? And always be careful to not a little careful to not, I guess, risk everything on a single deal. But to start out, there's so many different ways, like FHA, VA, USDA. There's all these different loan products, conventional with 5% down. There's so many different ways to get in without risking everything. And honestly, if you're going to get into it, house hack, because that's the least risky way. Like you need a place to live anyway. You're going to either pay rent or pay yourself. So
love it, man.
Take the action, man. Go after it.
That was awesome. I could talk to you for another hour, but I do respect your time, and I know you have other things to do rather than just chat with us. So this was great. I think, we appreciate not only your service, but your time with us tonight. If people want to learn more about you, if they want to learn more about you and maybe network, maybe they want to get into deals with you, maybe they're like, I love Blake, I want to learn more about boutique hotels. So what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Best way would be, I'd say a week ago, you could come to Boutique Hotel Con, but we just finished that up, man. We had a room full of 85 badasses. It was so awesome to see all these boutique hotel investors descend on Tennessee like that. But the best way would probably just be Instagram. I'm on there at Blake J Dailey. If you guys, have a question of, your first deal about boutique hotels, of how to make your STRs more efficient, or just, need a kick in the butt to go do the deal or make the call that you should, I'm your guy.
Got it, man. Thanks so much. We appreciate your time, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah. Thank you guys, man.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Wealth Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube at Wealth Juice Official, where we post daily tips, tricks, and document our own journey towards financial freedom.